So moving on to the final leg for today and the most interesting part, the panel discussion. I would like to introduce our panelists for today. Mr. Ashok Chajjer ji, he is the Chairman and Managing Director of Arihant Superstructures Limited. Arihant Superstructures Limited is a listed company on NSE and BSE and one of the top real estate brands in Navi Mumbai and Jodhpur, Rajasthan. The company has delivered 12,000 homes in all categories of affordable housing, luxurious housing in 1 decade starting from 2010. Can I invite Ashok ji on stage, please? We have architect Soyuz Talib ji with us. He's founded Soyuz Talib Architects in 1997 and sets the design direction of the practice as a whole. He has a wealth of experience and has worked on a number of significant projects in and around Mumbai and India. Deshpande sir. I will also re-invite Deshpande sir on the stage. We also have amongst us Shri Ashok Mohanani ji. He is the dynamic president of NAREDCO Maharashtra and chairman of EKTA World, Mr. Ashok Mohanani. And our moderator for today is none other than Harshul Savla. We see him more on Amazon books than in reality. Dr. Advocate Harshul Savla is managing partner at Suvidha Lifespaces, a third-generation real estate development company which has built more than 1.5 million square feet across Mumbai. Thing to note is he is a national best-selling author and has published 16 books on real estate, for which he holds a world record from more than 28 record keepers, including World Book of Records, London. So, Harshul, the floor is all yours.
Thanks. Thanks, Anand, for that introduction. I think we had some great presentations and speeches by keynote speakers, which has really set the background to the third child of Mumbai 3.0. And like all families, there's always a lot of expectation with the third child. And, you always want to get it right in terms of, whatever's lacking with the first and second. And then we had our chief guest address that, it's not really the third child, but it's actually going to be part of the mainland in terms of connectivity because of various MMRDA projects. Now, what is very interesting is, I principally develop mainly in South Mumbai and, talks about construction cost rise and all, do concern, but do not bother much, honestly, because we have concerns about land and licensing. So actually that really takes up 70 to 80% of the bandwidth. And then, we are talking about a region which is so well placed, right, in terms of almost 1 lakh crore worth projects are planned by the government. This is really a region which was Navi Mumbai 20 years back, and we really have the time to get it right. Also one of the lowest population density, 328 people per square kilometer. So much scope for green development. Now that is clearly the theme around which I'm going to moderate, this particular panel. And as has been said by the previous speakers, it is not just affordable, but it's also aspirational, and it is around, planned layouts. So I think one of the first question that I would have, is for Deshpande ji. That, we've seen a lot of these, infrastructure-oriented projects, mega projects, which since I was in college, I was reading about, and it always excites, creates a land boom, and, that sort of withers away with every election. But I think one of the major challenges, while we're seeing a lot of work on these infra projects, major challenge lies what goes internally in that region, because if that basic infrastructure which Sandeep ji was addressing also, tends to become the responsibility of a developer, and for small developers tends to be a challenge. So what are, as a town planner, your thought process around the initiatives that the government, of course, along with the developers and association take in order to ensure that the intranodal connectivity is also taken care of as much as internodal connectivity is?
Yeah. What we call is an off-site infrastructure and on-site infrastructure. Now, this is a little tricky. Where do we stop? At a regional level, we talk about regional connectivity. Connecting two growth centers is what MMRDA can do. But if you look at the region, then a region has various municipal corporations and municipal councils. So some amount of internal road network, water supply, stormwater, sewerage, solid waste management, street lighting, power supply, assured power supply, fiber optic connectivity. With different agencies, basically it's a local authority. But because it's NAREDCO, Neral, Karjat chapter that we are talking about, let me understand your question and give you something. What is going to happen in this area of Neral, Karjat? I think that's what your intent is. If we consider this area, which is a green field for that matter, when you consider about entire Mumbai metropolitan region, if there is a special planning authority like MMRDA or New Town Development Authority like SIDCO, then these agencies, which are not local authorities or local areas, but are special planning authorities, will provide necessary infrastructure to enable the housing and the commercial market and the retail markets and the industrial markets to come up. However, there will be something at a layout level or something at a plot level and something at a city level. Okay, regional network will be at city level. Layout level, if there are big townships, it is all responsibility of a developer because there are some incentives pulled in it. But yes, if you're looking at these areas which you're talking about, Karjat, where small plot site developments are taking place, it would be a PPP jointly. MMRDA, if it puts a land pooling method or a town planning scheme, then we can also chip in some more infrastructure at a plot level. But then land will always be a constraint and PPP is a way forward. Maybe perhaps accommodation reservation is the way forward to develop some infrastructure facilities because we will need for water supply, treatment plants, for sewage treatment plant, for solid waste, we'll need reservations and sites to develop that. Social infrastructure again is a very important thing, which is what we call has to be parallelly developed with your housing infrastructure because we need good schools. If they are small plots, they are not providing that. And they are not mega cities and they are not ITP policies or townships, then we need social infrastructure like hospitals and schools which are also ready to become up. Yes, MMRDA or SIDCO or MSRDC, whoever are the planning authorities will do that. But then PPP is the road, a way forward for that, that is what I feel.
Great. I think clearly the takeaway is going to be PPP, and that is how South Mumbai also sort of with 33-7 and other redevelopment schemes sought to be developed. Chajjer ji, there's been so much conviction that you have seen showcased in Navi Mumbai and Raigad area, and while we were talking about ticket sizes of 30 lakhs, you've managed to operate in a bandwidth of 30 lakhs to 3 crores. So what has been your experience in this region, and what is the reason for this conviction? Because every developer who typically tends to make it big in this region wants to go south, but you've actually expanded further north up. So what really explains that experience?
Well, it started off when we just moved out of the Navi Mumbai NMMC area. And when we see the larger development, it could happen up for the affordable housing only in this region. And going forward, it looks that the things would move out when it's called Raigad, and Raigad happens to be very large. Panvel happens to be the main heart of the Raigad district. And that is where the things are happening. That is where all the big boys are there. That is where the larger scape of what Mumbai witnessed on Godbandar Road happening again over here in terms of big townships. When it comes to Karjat Neral, yes, there has been little constraint in terms of development because the connectivity could not happen a decade ago. And once it happens, it would see up a new phase. But till the town, till the time, it's in time to wait and see how things move. And as in Raigad, yes, Raigad caters to everything because the finest of the Raigad roads happens to be the Kharghar, which is the richest, which is the costliest. and it caters to all the product line, right from and 25 lakhs, 20 lakhs of a house up to almost 3 crores, 4 crores.
Thank you. Talib ji, you have been practicing in that area quite a lot. And what kind of development opportunities, do you envisage happening? And in terms of especially mastered layouts, which is otherwise difficult to execute in Mumbai 1 and Mumbai 2, but, has a great potential given the low population density over there. So what has been your experience in terms of real estate developments which has been happening since you are doing a wide array of asset classes?
Okay, I see a great opportunity there in Karjat. But I don't know whether this opportunity will be missed really. Most of the times we have opportunities and we miss them. One of the things that I have experienced in New Bombay is that when we started off many years back, 20 years back when I started my practice in New Bombay, everything was well laid out. There were great roads. There was a systematic plan in place, and Shitco had kind of taken over the entire gambit of trying to make a layout that was workable. And even today, when we kind of get back home to New Bombay, we are very, very relieved to be back home from the chaos of Bombay. When I look at what's happening to New Bombay now, I mean, after the coming in of the UDCPR, which kind of rolled in a few years back, there has been something that has been given in the UDCPR with the builders. There is the one word that builders love, that is the word FSI. FSI is something that, RADCO, it excites them. The word FSI kind of drives everyone crazy. So what's happened is that probably I have seen that most people want this more and more and more of FSI, which something I don't understand because it only raises up the land prices. It does not give any money back in the builder's pocket. I mean, what happens is that your land prices go up, you build houses which are more and more expensive because you have to build taller and taller. And that's where, the game is lost because you cannot build affordable housing the minute you grow taller and taller. So what I think is, in terms of opportunity that Karjat has, I would request the special planning authorities not to raise the FSI bar ever in this area and try to retain it and cap the FSI in such a manner that, things are very much in control. Affordable housing can be only built if the FSI is limited and you can build low-rise, maybe lower density housing in the area. Karjat has been like a sleepy town with very, very low population density, and now there is going to be an advent of, a lot of new housing that comes in. So when housing comes in and we have this high-rise development, it's not going to be affordable. We need to build low-rise, and like Deshpande sir mentioned, it has to be a place where you go for pleasure and for leisure, rather than make that nature into a concrete jungle. That's what I feel should be done.
So I think that's clearly a great thought, and this is really part of the economic theory where they have something called as the curve of diminishing marginal utility. So till a point, it's of use, but after a tipping point, which is the peak, that point really from there goes downhill, and which is the case with FSI as well. And that has interestingly been an observation even in the island city, where now potential up to 7, 8 FSI in case of incentive schemes of cess buildings are available. And developers are clearly complaining that, we don't want this FSI anymore because the kind of premiums and deficiencies that it attracts, it's just not worth it. So I think that's a great observation with regards to this whole FSI madness which has taken place of late. Ashok ji, very interesting tale where you are developing flats in ultra luxury segments, and you are also developing flats where they are completely worth the token you take for your ultra luxury segment. So your experience from Bandra to Virar, it's a huge bandwidth. And now today, after listening to Satish ji's presentation about all the infrastructure, listening to our chief guest about how the mainland is getting connected, and Abhishek's statistics about the kind of residential velocity that Raigad is witnessing, What are your thoughts about entering this particular market, or overall your observation as a developer who's never been part of this micro market, but clearly after your takeaways from today's sessions?
Yeah, so Harshul, let me at least, correct to a certain extent. Yeah, we are in the uber luxury, we are in the luxury, we are in the mid segment as well as affordable, as you rightly said. Okay, we've delivered about 14,500 homes till now, and out of which 30% are in affordable, so they're not less by any chance. Okay, so though Virar, maybe Nasik, maybe partly Pune also, what we need to, what my friends around here, who are just in the industry the last maybe few years or maybe a decade, have to keep one thing in mind is, mainly three things I would say. One is focus on infrastructure, because Deshpande sir is here. He also emphasizes, Srinivas also emphasizes on infrastructure. It's very important that wherever you develop, infrastructure is the key. You enter the location, keeping in mind that what is there for you in the next few years, how the infrastructure is going to, help us to actually tide over our issues there. The second thing is cost. Okay, we have a very, very thin margin. We are working on a wafer thing. My Ashok ji, will agree with me that, we do not have that luxury of margin that we would have probably in South Mumbai or mid South Mumbai. But having said that, if one can control costs, okay, we just read now about a building coming up 12 stories in 96 days. So this is, even if you have to spend 200 rupees more per square feet, that will be about 10% more on the construction cost. Can we evaluate, can we consider that we do a prefab structure? If we can do that, and if we can afford that, put that in the cost, and even, because you see the interest cost is going to be much more than 200 rupees a square foot, So interest, if you project delays by 3 or 4 years, okay, developers finished, completely finished. So let's look at innovation. Let's look at bringing technology in affordable housing so that we can cater to this segment. The millennials are really, really wanting to buy houses, okay? And they're coming to us. People from 25 to 35 is the average age of, my buyers in Virar and Nasik, okay? So Harshul, if we can cater to them, we can give them quick delivery, we can work on cost, if we can work with the support of the government, with Mr. Deshpande also, to work on infrastructure, I think this is a good place to be. Raigad per se, it has its own beauty, it has its, historic background, it has its trans-harbor connectivity, the airport. I think in the next 2.5 years, we can see it, that Raigad is going to be not only 3.2, but 1.0. I'm very, very confident that Raigad is the place that we would all want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashok ji. Extremely encouraging, and really brings forth a very, very important point. Satish ji, at this point, I would really want to congratulate the government efforts, which has led to conglomerates take decision. Like, for example, Godrej, has acquired more than 300 acres and has literally shifted their plant and base from Vikhroli, which was erstwhile their pad, to Khalapur. So, we are seeing these, and there has been recently a Vedanta announcement as well. Indospace, a huge logistic player, is actually ramped up a lot of warehousing and industrial space. So we are seeing these micro-economic zones getting created, while entire Abhishek's presentation was residential, but it comes to a moot question: what will the people eat? What will be their jobs? What will be the livelihoods? Where will these jobs come from? And often it's seen that one wants to avoid travel to vicinity areas and look for jobs in and around. So that's why deplorable conditions are there in Mumbai slums, but still people, because of livelihood issues, prefer to stay over there. So what do you think is the idea of MMRDA around creating these micro economic zones in terms of industrial hubs, knowledge hubs, warehousing logistic hubs?
If you look at Mumbai metropolitan region, yes, when we talk about growth centers, when we talk about South Bombay, then Lower Parel, then we talk Bandra Kurla complex, these are concentration zones of jobs, high-end jobs. But let us understand that 50% of Mumbai has formal jobs. All the 50% of them are informal jobs. When you're looking at basically decentralization, de-densification of Mumbai metropolitan region, we need to create different job markets. There is a concept called as mixed land use. There also is a concept which is now building up is transit-oriented development with mixed land use, with affordable housing as a major component of this. Because what we have realized and what was missed from the presentation which Abhishek made was, what is that amount of money which we give for housing is very much more and more, about 40 to 50% of the income for a person who is earning less than only 10% of the income who is earning more. So when you are targeting that person who is earning much less, you are talking about 40 to 50% of his cost only on transportation. So are we talking about a rich person spending 10% on a transport cost ready to do 12%, or we are talking about somebody who is giving 40% of the cost? So transit-oriented development, Mumbai has it in its DNA. If you see all the railway stations of Mumbai, you have a high-end area, most of the retail, formal, informal, organized, unorganized, around the stations. So now what we are doing is in greenfield projects, where we are talking about this area, about 400 kilometers of metro stations coming up. So we have 400 metro stations. Out of that, live about 200 in Mumbai, which are brownfield. All other 200 plus metro stations which are coming in semi-urban, peri-urban or outskirts in the areas which you are talking about as greenfield projects. We will be having about 1 kilometer of circle, which is called as transit-oriented zone, where we will having retail, jobs, affordable housing, where people can travel about 10 to 15 minutes. Then we call about walkable cities, we talk about cyclable cities. When we are talking about these concepts, it is these areas which Niranjan Hiranandani told us as opening up of an land. Now this is the land which is getting opened up for these concepts, where in 10 to 15 minutes of walk or 5 to 10 minutes of bicycling, you are at the nearest place to travel. Again, when in the presentation in the morning, in the afternoon session, initially which I made about, let's talk about the scenario of Mumbai metropolitan region and what's happening globally. As the wealth creation happens, you must have understood that as a weekend concept has come, where you talk about only 5 days working. It's soon going to be 4 days working, very soon, maybe 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. We talk about all the technology innovations helping you, the things getting much faster. And the mobility, which is more and more ease, people are going to reach home early, they're going to travel less, they're going to have more of the 24 hours which was used for 3 hours or 2 hours of average transportation time is going to reduce by 1 hour or less, or what MMRDA is aspiring to provide anywhere to anywhere within Mumbai metropolitan region in 45 minutes. It's globally talked about that if your traveling time is 45 minutes, you are very active, you are very vibrant city to grow. And your GDP contribution is much higher if your traveling time is only 45 minutes, because people world over have done research and studies and understood that what is the GDP loss in traffic jams. So even the research has gone to that extent to find, and when we Mumbai, we are losing too much. So when we are going to have this mobility plan in place, people are having more and more time in their hands. They are thinking more about their good health and about their wellness. We need which are jobs which are very close, which are jobs which are very sophisticated. We talk about fintech and IT related jobs. We are not definitely going to have primary sector. Manufacturing is going far away. So you talk about logistics. Why? Because this is 2.5 crore people who are consumers, who are high-end consumers, who are wealth creation and consuming retails. So you need logistics parts around that. Perhaps this area is also very close to Pune. And that's why Pune, Nasik, Mumbai, this triangle, this Karjat, Neral, could come out as a warehousing, innovation park, affordable housing, all supplemented by one area which is education, number one, which is going to be required, hospitals, which is again health. So health, education, infrastructure going to take place in these areas is going to create high-end jobs, plus already a step forward taken by Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani in data center. And I would also second what Mr. Talib said, more FSI is not good FSI. More FSI doesn't bring affordability with you. However, with modest FSI, low buildings, think about good quality of life. You can start providing gated communities with bungalows. With this connectivities, your bungalows are going to have good densities, good affordable people staying in it, and it may not be a second home, it could be their first home, living in Karjat, Neral, and working in Mumbai. However, we need jobs, we need agglomeration economies to sustain in those areas. Please don't consider this area as a dependent on something. Please consider it as an independent area which is for certain amount of jobs dependent on Mumbai, but for all basic jobs, a 7 or 8 lakhs population will provide itself the job magnet within itself. And that is what MMRDA is trying to do in this area.
That's really a master class on urban planning, town planning, and all aspects. And the key takeaway for me, in that whole bit was self-sufficiency of the region. And, that clearly is most important in terms of, sustaining the entire growth momentum. One thing important about Raigad is that there is almost 83% literacy. So, we shouldn't look at it only as a blue-collared market. This is clearly a white-collared market. The rate of urbanization is almost 37 to 38%, which is highest, and capital appreciation is almost 1.5 to double of MMR. So all the parameters in terms of a checklist a developer looks at are pretty much in place. Cultural heritage, beaches, forts, ecotourism, everything is pretty much in place. It's just the right approach in terms of developers taking interest and the infrastructure getting executed in a timely fashion. So I think absolutely agree with you. The self-containedness is the key. Ashokji, at this point, I would provide you an opportunity since we have Sir with us. So I always see these representations from associations, to MMRDA, to MIDC, asking for various things. So this is a way you could have your top 3 ask to MMRDA for your region, which you would otherwise be sending in form of a letterhead, but you could do it live.
Well, as a developer, I would ask more for myself. But for the sector and industry, when you talked about these 2 regions, and one real mega project, which already was christened and already exists, is the Panvel-Mathiran Road, the State Highway 54. And that below the mountains connectivity can bring the whole region almost equivalent to Panvel. And if that can be taken up, that would be my first ask from MMRDA, which can really change horizons rather than going all around from Badlapur to Thane to this part of the city, or from Karjat to Khalapur and etc., going back to Panvel and etc. on this side. So rather than going east, we can go straight down. State Highway 54 is already unmarked, and if that, because the things have started moving of having connectivity through the mountains when it was there, when it is happening also all in Airoli and Shilfata and etc., etc. So if that can be taken up, it would ease down, it will bring in more valuability to the region of this area. And as we see that the largest of the good educations happens up in this region, though even from Mr. Ambani's planned out to have the biggest Harvard University style of working of 1,200 acres on Karjat, and existing institutions are already there. That would be my first ask. The second ask can be that on tourism we talk about, but to be very frank, there is no tourism in this part of the whole city. If the style, the culture, the texture, if we talk about, the beaches are not good, not clean. No. So that is where tourism, we can adopt up a model what the government of Rajasthan took across 20 years ago. How tourism could be promoted, supported, pushed, which Mr. Bhairu Singh Shekhawat did it up 20 years ago from in Rajasthan, and today we see that Rajasthan across in tourism tops some of the good states. And we have good heritage properties like Raigad forts and etc., where the big houses like Taj and etc. can easily come up. The big names and that policies can help out. The developers would have least to do rather than spending on these portions. There can be lot when we talk about 350 square kilometer, Raigad, or the 3.20, almost equivalent to Mumbai. So it's such a big, large landscape. and having the Western Ghats, etc., etc. What also is required, the entertainment, the leisure space, the tourism space inside the city, so that the cities are not exactly what Mumbai has thrown up. So if you see, though we are proud of Mumbai, it is as Mumbaikas that we are good workaholic, etc. But to be frankly, we don't live life like North Indians. Like the Delhiites, we don't live life. So we don't have lifestyles. We will still be working till 10 o'clock in the night. So अगर वो PPP projects के model से भी कोई developer, कोई institute, कोई houses, कोई बहुत बड़े size पे, other than one iMagica is there undoubtedly, but in addition to it, city को आने वाले समय में, when we talk about 10 years, 20 years down the line, and it will take this much of time for these type of projects to start up today and to have the correct full blooming up picture. It will take 20 years, because saying is easy, but when revenue model comes, the investments come, the returns comes, the IRR comes, it will require to be pushed. So PPP project on tourisms, on entertainments, on where there is no real estate, absolutely no houses to be sold. That type of development can be promoted. We as developers will not be able to participate other than the big boys who may aspire to do so, but that will help out. So this would be my 3 asks.
Great. So I think that was clearly the message, which was pretty clear, that if you want to sell houses, you need to have the other pieces in place, the social infra, the entertainment, the education, the well-being quotient. And if that is in place, houses will sell de facto. And of course, the industrial and the economic piece, which Deshpande ji addressed. So I think Deshpande ji has got a wonderful idea where we could take 1 or 2 questions from audience if there are any.
Let me respond to Ashok Bhai's long list, which was put into 3 points. But yes, we will definitely consider SH54. It is Comprehensive Transport Study Phase 2, which was supposed to come after 3 years. But now that you have invited me and Commissioner for this Neral Karjat area, we look into from Neral Karjat towards Mumbai and try to expedite that. That's number 1. Regarding tourism, I agree with you. Government of Maharashtra has already directed MMRDA to prepare a comprehensive tourism plan for Mumbai metropolitan region. And let me tell you, with whatever statistics we have, we don't have a tourism economy. We have a lot of tourism attractions. Neral Karjat is full of tourism attractions. Think of what Niranjan told us. If Alibag can have 50 hotels, Karjat can have 30 hotels. And when we're calling about hotels, just think about this conference happening there. And people traveling there, having conferences there. So all the corporates who have in Mumbai go through MTHL, book and weekend conference, workshop, brainstorming sessions there. And that's what is going to bring business, agglomeration economies, multipliers in that area. And then Soyuz could design a beautiful resort type of things there. Soyuz, with lot of landscaping around you. That's the area which we want to preserve in Mumbai metropolitan region, Karjat. When I frankly speak and come this, I'm a little afraid that this again becomes, because if you see the skyline, it's very tall. And that's actually Mumbai. And that is not dream for Karjat and Neral, which we look. So you and me agree that we'll have a low density, not we call it affordable, very luxurious, low end. However, they're not G plus 20, G plus 30, but even G plus 5, G plus 6 is more affordable, sellable. And number 2 is it's very sustainable in that environment. And what we can say is it will provide some good open spaces, quality of life, people walk and cycle, we have good tracks, pedestrianization is given priority, there's no honking of the cars, there's no chowks, people have their all alleys and gullies where they play, there's a front yard, open yard, like you have Vashi Sector 6 or Vashi Sector 7, which was planned. People travel around the green areas. So if that kind of planning happens there, and you are just connected across the creek, in 30 minutes you are in Cuff Parade, and 40 minutes you are in Cuff Parade and this area, definitely as you and me agree, it could be 1.0 of the future.
So I think great response, and I think the representation has been addressed right away.
One point which I want to tell all the NAREDCO who are here, You score 1 point which Mumbai 1.0 in present context cannot score. They are scared because of one thing which you cannot be. You are from a resilient area. And when you're talking about climate change, when you're talking about resilient, we're talking about adaptation, whether it's 1.5 meter or 1 meter or 2 meter high rise, you don't know whether zoo people will have a book a flat here and keep it ready. Maybe 30 years down the line, 40 years, 50 years down the line, climate change is here to adapt. It's going to be here. Temperature variations are taking place. So once the sea rise happens, we need to adapt to that very soon. But this area, which is now greenfield and is now going to be developed, is already resilient to all those areas because it's far away from the effects of climate change. So you have a plus for the next 50 years already within you, which those people have to start worrying about is already no worry for you.
Absolutely great. So, I've been prompted that we are short on time, and which is why we will conclude with the panel. However, the panelists would be available to address and for networking after the panel discussion and vote of thanks as well. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you, Harshul, and thank you, panelists, for that wonderful insights. I think we feel proud that we are in an area that is growing so good. Can I quickly request our committee members, Vikas Jain, to please come and felicitate Ashok Chajjer ji? Is he here, Vikas? Dinesh bhai, can you please felicitate Ashok ji? Kumar Malani is here. Mandar. Next is Soyuz Talib ji. Please felicitate Harshul. Harshul, we can have a group picture with the panelists. In the meanwhile, I would like to acknowledge the presence of some esteemed guests with us. Shri Kiran Bagarji, past president of MCHI Raigad. Shri Santosh Ambavneji, president Maharashtra Builders Association. Shri Prakash Bhaviskarji, managing committee member NAREDCO Maharashtra. Shri Anish Shah, VP, vice president NAREDCO Maharashtra. Ms. Tara Subramaniam, president NAREDCO Mahi, which is a women's wing. And Vasant Bhai Bhadra, past president of BANM.